There comes a time in life when the roles between parents and children begin to shift. You spend decades raising them, guiding them, sacrificing for them, only to one day realize that something has changed. Maybe they ignore your advice, dismiss your opinions, or even talk down to you. Worse, they might make you feel like a burden, and it hurts. If your children have started treating you with less respect than you deserve, you might feel frustrated or even angry. You might want to remind them of everything you've done for them, the years of hard work, the sacrifices, the endless support. But here's the truth. Getting angry won't fix it. In fact, it often makes things worse. Instead, there's a much more effective way to regain their respect without fighting, without arguments, and without resentment. Today, we're going to explore 6 powerful shifts that can completely transform the way your children see and treat you. These aren't about demanding respect, they're about earning it in a way that commands dignity, authority, and self-worth. Some of these might surprise you, but if you stay with me until the end, you'll understand exactly how to restore your place as a respected, valued figure in their lives. 1. Stop chasing their approval. One of the biggest mistakes parents make, especially as they grow older, is trying too hard to please their children. You go out of your way to accommodate them, saying yes when you want to say no. You put their needs ahead of your own, hoping that if you just do enough, they'll appreciate you more. But here's the painful truth. The more you chase their approval, the less they respect you. Respect isn't earned through self-sacrifice, it's earned through self-respect. If you're always bending over backward, always giving in, always trying to keep the peace, what you're really teaching them is that your feelings come second. And once they start believing that, it's easy for them to take you for granted. Take Margaret, a once strong and independent woman who, over the years, started letting her children make all the decisions. She rearranged her schedule around their needs, kept her opinions to herself, and ignored the way they spoke down to her. She told herself, "I just want to keep the family together." But what happened? Her children stopped valuing her. They saw her as someone who would always adjust, always agree, always stay silent. She thought she was keeping the peace, but what she was really doing was losing her voice. If your children don't respect you, the first step isn't to demand it, it's to stop acting like you need it. Set boundaries. Say no when necessary. Speak your mind even if they don't like what you have to say, because the moment you start respecting yourself, they will start seeing you differently. And in time, that respect will come back to you, too. Don't argue, lead by example. When your children dismiss your opinions, talk over you, or treat you with disrespect, your first instinct might be to argue, to remind them of everything you've done, to demand that they listen. But let me tell you something that will save you years of frustration. Arguing never works. Think about it. When was the last time you convinced someone to respect you by fighting for it? Respect isn't won through words, it's earned through presence. Take Frank, a retired teacher who led a classroom with confidence for years. But at home, his grown children ignored his advice, dismissed his concerns, and sometimes even laughed at his opinions. At first, he argued. He tried to prove he still deserved their respect. But the more he fought, the worse things got. Then, one day, Frank made a change. Instead of arguing, he started listening, really listening. He stopped chasing respect with words and instead carried himself like a man who already had it. He spoke calmly, with wisdom, without the need to win, and slowly, his children started noticing. They saw a man who wasn't desperate for their approval, who didn't need to prove himself, who simply was a figure of strength. If your children don't respect you, don't fight them for it. Show them what respect looks like through your actions. Keep your dignity. Speak with confidence. And never lower yourself to their level, because when you hold your ground with grace, they will feel it. and in time, they will follow your lead. 3. Withdraw your emotional dependency. One of the hardest lessons to learn as you grow older is that you can't depend on your children for emotional fulfillment. You may love them deeply and want them to love and respect you in return. But the moment they sense that you need them to feel valued, the power in the relationship shifts. Here's the reality. People, even your own children, respect those who are emotionally independent. When you rely on them for validation, affection, or attention, it puts pressure on them. And instead of feeling grateful, they start feeling burdened. They might pull away, start treating you with impatience, or even irritation. Take Helen, a kind-hearted mother who had given everything to her children. As they grew older and got busy with their own lives, she found herself waiting by the phone, hoping they'd call. When they didn't, she called them instead too often. She reminded them how much she missed them, how she wished they would visit more. But instead of bringing them closer, it pushed them away. Then, one day, Helen made a change. She stopped waiting. She stopped calling first. Instead, she started focusing on herself, picking up new hobbies, going out with friends, and taking care of her own happiness. And something surprising happened. Her children started calling more. They started respecting her time. They saw her as someone with a full life of her own. The lesson is simple. The less you depend on your children to make you feel needed, the more they will start valuing your presence. When you show them that you can stand strong on your own, they will start respecting you. Not out of obligation, but because they genuinely admire the life you've built for yourself. Respect isn't something you can demand from your children. It's something you inspire through the way you carry yourself, set boundaries, and live your life. If they have started treating you with less care, less consideration, or less respect, don't waste your energy getting angry. Instead, shift your approach. Stop chasing their approval, because the less you need it, the more they'll give it. Lead by example, because your dignity speaks louder than words. Withdraw your emotional dependence, because when you stand strong, they will start respecting you, not out of obligation, but out of admiration, because in the end, respect isn't something you demand, it's something you earn. And when you do, your children will see you differently, not as someone waiting for their attention, but as someone who commands respect simply by being who they are. 4. Set boundaries and enforce them with confidence. One of the biggest reasons children lose respect for their parents as they age is because boundaries are not clearly set, or worse, they are set, but never enforced. If your children have gotten used to treating you with disrespect, impatience, or entitlement, it's because at some point they learned that they could do so without consequences. Boundaries are not about being harsh or creating distance. They are about teaching others how to treat you. Think about Mary, a 75-year-old mother who always put her children first. She let them interrupt her plans, demand her time at the last minute, and even speak to her in ways that made her feel small. She never pushed back because she didn't want to create tension. But over time, she realized that by allowing this behavior, she was unintentionally teaching them that it was acceptable. One day, Mary decided to set clear boundaries. When her son spoke to her in a dismissive tone, she calmly said, "I won't continue this conversation if I'm not spoken to with respect." When her daughter started expecting her to rearrange her plans last minute, she said, "I already have commitments. I'm happy to see you another time when we can both plan ahead." At first, her children were shocked. They had grown so used to her sacrificing herself for their convenience that they didn't know how to respond. But over time, something changed. They stopped treating her as an afterthought. They started valuing her time, her presence, and her role in their lives. Not because she demanded it, but because she showed them that she deserved it. If your children frequently disregard your time or cancel plans at the last minute, speak to you with impatience or condescension, expect you to drop everything for their convenience, make decisions for you without your input. It's time to set firm boundaries and, more importantly, enforce them. Boundaries are only as strong as your willingness to stand by them. The moment you allow them to be crossed, you teach others that they were never real to begin with. And if you don't respect your own boundaries, why would anyone else? 5. Stop playing the role of the rescuer. One of the hardest lessons for parents to learn, especially those who have always been nurturers and providers, is that your children's problems are not always yours to solve. For decades, you may have been the one to fix things, whether it was financial help, emotional support, or stepping in whenever they were struggling. And while this may have been necessary when they were younger, continuing to rescue them in adulthood often leads to resentment and lack of respect. Take George, a 78-year-old father whose son frequently called for money whenever he mismanaged his finances. At first, George gave freely. After all, he wanted to help. But over time, he noticed that his son wasn't learning responsibility. In fact, he had become entitled to his father's support, treating it as something he was owed rather than a privilege. The final straw came when George refused to give him money one time, and his son reacted with anger, insults, and complete disregard for everything his father had done for him in the past. That's when George realized something important. Respect isn't built through handouts. It's built through accountability. Many parents believe that by always helping their children, they will earn their love and respect. But often, the opposite happens. When you rescue too much, they stop seeing you as a parent and start seeing you as a safety net, someone who exists to serve their needs rather than someone to honor and respect. If you find yourself giving financial support that is never appreciated, always fixing their problems instead of letting them figure it out, feeling drained because they only reach out when they need something, it's time to step back. Support should never come at the cost of your dignity. Teach them self-reliance, responsibility, and the value of gratitude, because true respect comes when they realize they cannot take you for granted. 6. Live a life that commands respect thee. Most respected older adults are not the ones who beg for their children's attention. They are not the ones who try to keep the family together at all costs. They are the ones who live full, rich, independent lives that make others admire them. Think about the elders in your life whom you respect the most. Are they the ones who waited around for their children to call? Or are they the ones who continue to grow, evolve, and pursue their passions well into their later years? Take Eleanor, a 79-year-old woman who, instead of waiting for her children to visit, built a life filled with travel, volunteering, and deep friendships. She was always busy, always engaged, and always living fully. Her children didn't forget about her. In fact, they admired her. They wanted to be around her, not out of obligation, but because she was interesting, inspiring, and full of life. On the other hand, Marjorie, who spent her days sitting at home, waiting for her children to call, became someone they visited out of duty, not desire. The way you carry yourself, the way you fill your time, and the way you treat your own life shapes how others see you. If you want your children to respect you, don't ask for it. Live in a way that makes them naturally admire you. Continue learning and growing. Try new things. Read, travel, take up new hobbies. Stay socially active. Build relationships outside of just family. Prioritize your health. Show them that you value yourself enough to take care of your body and mind. Be financially independent. Never put yourself in a position where they feel like they have to take care of you. When you live a life that is rich, full, and deeply satisfying, respect comes naturally. People, especially your children, will be drawn to you because of the person you are, not just the role you once played in their lives. If your children don't respect you, the first step isn't to ask them to change. It's to change the way you allow yourself to be treated. Stop chasing their approval. Respect yourself first, and they will follow. Don't argue, lead by example. Let your dignity do the talking. Withdraw your emotional dependence. You are whole and valuable on your own. Set boundaries and enforce them. No one will respect what you don't respect yourself. Stop playing the rescuer. Let them stand on their own 2 feet. Live a life that commands respect. Be someone they admire, not just someone they visit out of obligation, because at the end of the day, respect is not something you ask for. It's something you embody. And when you do, the people around you, including your children, will have no choice but to see you in a new light. 7. Know when to let go and walk away. And of the hardest truths to accept is that not all relationships can be fixed, even with your own children. There may come a time when, despite your efforts to set boundaries, demand respect, and live a fulfilling life, your children still choose to disregard your feelings, dismiss your needs, or treat you as an afterthought. And when that happens, you have a choice. You can keep fighting for their approval, sacrificing your dignity in the process. Or you can let go and focus on the life you deserve. Take Samuel, an 80-year-old man who spent years trying to mend his relationship with his son. No matter what he did, whether it was being more accommodating, reaching out first, or apologizing for things he wasn't even sure he did wrong, his son remained distant, indifferent, and at times downright rude. One day, Samuel made a powerful decision. He realized that he was pouring love into a relationship that would never return it. And so, instead of chasing a bond that no longer existed, he shifted his energy toward people who valued him, his friends, his church community, his neighbors. At first, it hurt. Letting go always does. But over time, he felt something he hadn't. In years, peace. Letting go does not mean you stop loving your children. It means you stop allowing their choices to define your happiness. If your children refuse to respect your boundaries, consistently dismiss your feelings, only reach out when they need something, make you feel like you're never enough, no matter what you do, then it may be time to release the expectation that they will change. Instead of trying to fix a one-sided relationship, focus on the relationships that bring you joy, the activities that make you feel alive, and the people who genuinely appreciate your presence. Walking away doesn't always mean cutting ties completely. It simply means you stop placing your happiness in their hands. And when you do, something incredible happens. You reclaim your power, your peace, and your self-worth. 8. Embrace the life that's waiting for you. Too many parents spend their later years waiting for their children to call, waiting for an apology that will never come, waiting for respect that should have been given freely. But life is happening right now. And every moment you spend waiting for something outside of your control is a moment you'll never get back. Take Eleanor, a 76-year-old woman who once felt invisible in her own family. She had spent years sacrificing, caring, and giving, only to realize that when she needed support, her children were too busy for her. One day, she made a choice. She stopped waiting. She started traveling alone at first, then with a group of like-minded seniors who shared her love of adventure. She started taking art classes, something she had always wanted to do, but never found the time for. She built new friendships, not just with people her age, but with younger generations who valued her wisdom, and slowly, something shifted. She became a person her children wanted to be around, not because they had to, but because she was living a life that inspired them. When you embrace your own happiness, you send a powerful message. I am worthy of joy, whether you recognize it or not. And that is the ultimate form of respect, not the kind you beg for, but the kind you give to yourself. If your children don't respect you, You have two choices. You can keep chasing their approval, hoping one day they will see your worth. Or you can step back, reclaim your dignity, and live a life that commands respect whether they give it to you or not. Set boundaries and mean them. Stop playing the rescuer and let them stand on their own. Surround yourself with people who value you, not those who tolerate you. Live in a way that makes you proud not for them, but for yourself, because at the end of the day, respect starts with you. And when you respect yourself enough to stop chasing, proving, and waiting, the people around you, including your children, will either step up or step aside. Either way, you win. At some point, you must ask yourself, are you living for their approval, or are you living for your own peace? For years, you may have put your children first, their needs, their happiness, their comfort, believing that in return, you would always have their love and respect. But if they have shown you, time and time again, that they do not value you, then the most empowering thing you can do is to stop waiting for them to change. This does not mean you stop loving them. It does not mean you stop caring about them. It simply means you stop giving them power over your happiness. Take Helen, a mother of three who spent decades trying to keep the family together, constantly reaching out, planning gatherings, and making sure everyone stayed close. But over time, she realized that she was the only one trying. When she stopped calling, no one called her. When she stopped making plans, no one made them for her. At first, it broke her heart. But then, something changed. She took back her time, her energy, her life. She started gardening again, something she had loved but neglected for years. She joined a local community group, where she met people who truly appreciated her. She stopped waiting for her children's validation and focused on validating herself. And suddenly, the loneliness disappeared because she realized that she was never truly alone. She had just been looking for love in the wrong places. What happens when you stop trying so hard? Something interesting happens when you stop pushing for a relationship that isn't being reciprocated. Some children realize what they've lost and start making an effort. Others drift further away, revealing that their love was conditional all along. And you start to feel lighter, freer, and more at peace. You no longer feel the sting of being ignored because you've stopped waiting for their attention. You no longer feel small because you've stopped begging for their respect. You no longer feel like an afterthought because you've made yourself a priority again. And that is the most powerful transformation of all. A new beginning. Living for yourself, not for them. You are not just a parent. You are a person, a soul, a life that still has so much to experience. If your children cannot see your worth, that is their loss, not yours. If they do not appreciate your love, then redirect that love to yourself. If they do not respect you, then respect yourself enough to walk away from the pain they cause, because you have given enough. Now, it is time to give to yourself. Spend your days with people who uplift you, doing things that bring you joy, in a life that feels fulfilling regardless of whether your children choose to be part of it or not. Because at the end of your life, when you look back, what will matter most? The years you spent chasing their approval, or the years you spent truly living? You cannot control your children's actions. You cannot force them to change, but you can control the way you respond. You can choose to set boundaries. You can choose to stop overgiving. You can choose to walk away from disrespect. You can choose peace over pain, and in making that choice, you reclaim the most important thing of all, yourself. Because, in the end, respect isn't something you ask for, it's something you show yourself first.